Now, please join me in welcoming Clarice Stamper from Lumentum. Hi, Clarice. And also David Simons from the Argus Group. Welcome, David. Linda Chen from Hypotenuse Labs. Hi again, Linda.
Hi, everyone.
And Stuart Fraser from Martin Rea International.
Good afternoon.
Welcome, Stuart. I know we only have a short period of time, so I'd love to hear about what types of innovations that you have introduced to engage with next-gen talent within your organization. Clarice, how's Lumentum done this?
I think we have a period of learning after COVID on how to move towards a very flexible environment. And when I meant flexible, it was not only about hours, but also about the way that we communicate. So teaching a workforce that has many generations on it, kind of like move towards on how also we can accommodate the new ones, the ones that are eager to join our company. And that help most definitely change some habits. So flexibility is our motto, not only again on hours, but also on the way that we communicate, on the way that interact. And it's hard not to have the face-to-face. We were forced to have the face-to-face, and that moved towards more meetings. So then the question was how I can make those meetings more fructive, okay, more tangible, more strategic, so everybody doesn't feel that woke up and you're in a meeting and you go to sleep and you're in a meeting and then suddenly your days are going past by yourself. How to have fun, how to enjoy, how to learn, and not only for our next gens, but also everybody in the workforce. So one of the things that we did is think about the hybrid mode after COVID, think about having some meetings, think about tangible agendas on a meeting. And then now that we are going to have a new building and an open perspective, how we rebuild the face-to-face interactions, which we all know by many studies that even the new generations are looking towards, are looking for that network, are looking for that emotional safe space where they can meet the people they have been learning or they have working with. So yes, those are the three things that we have done and that we're going and pursue to do.
Thanks so much, Clarice. That word flexibility has certainly been a key one for us over the last few COVID years. David, what's the perspective from the Argus Group? What innovations have you been working on?
Yeah, sure. I mean, a lot of the similar themes apply. I mean, given the nature of our business, we've always been sort of geographically dispersed, and we've had teams that are geographically dispersed. But you still had these sort of clusters of teams in one office that work together for the most part, and then other clusters in other offices. Then, sort of COVID, the onset of COVID really just leveled the playing field across the board. So fortunately for us, because of our dispersed nature, we had to start to invest in like a lot of the collaboration tools that are just commonplace nowadays, like Microsoft Teams and Miro. And one of the things I recall as we were rolling out some of these tools, and this was the fall of 2019. One of the things we were talking about and discussing is how are we going to get adoption, right? How are we going to change people's practices so that they start using some of these tools a lot more, because we saw the benefits of them. And then COVID just sort of solved that problem for us in no time flat. So that was good. But now that hybrid work is really here to stay, we've got to rethink kind of what the experience we want to create. How do we create a sense of belonging in a dispersed workforce? How do we attach people's roles, and on a day-to-day basis to our overall mission and purpose of the company? So coming up with strategies to have this kind of pull strategy to bring people back into the office. We're not going to force people to come back into the office, but we want to attract them back into the office, attract them to collaborate on a face-to-face basis more where that's possible. So we're doing things like creating collaborative innovation spaces in transforming our physical spaces, and also, thinking about how can we support our employees through, these challenging times, and as far as their mental well-being goes, and other assistance. I recall even during a period of lockdowns, we had programs where those employees that had children, we would offer them lunch for their kids, so that there's one less thing that they had to think about. So come to the work, pick up a bunch of lunches for your kids. So that's one thing, one less thing you have to think about. So things like that, finding ways to assist our employees. But I just sum it up to say that now the experience more so than ever has to be, the employee experience more so than ever has to be a really deliberate effort. And we're just focusing constantly on finding new ways to enhance that, such that we can, get the best out of our teammates.
Thanks so much, David. That whole aspect about wellness has definitely been a key one as well for us. Linda, what's a perspective from Hypotenuse Labs?
I want to piggyback off of what David was saying. I think it's really key what you're saying about attracting people to collaborate, because of course I think we're all very familiar with COVID dispersing everyone and kind of siloing people into their own space. So engagement is that much more difficult virtually. So the question for us is a little bit different, because we've always actually been remote from the start. But as you said, the playing field is leveled now with everyone, and it forces everyone to think about remote practices a lot more carefully, and us included as well. So I think the key here is just giving people different types of opportunities to support the lifestyle that they want. Some people prefer to be at home, to be with their family and their kids, and we want to be able to give them that lifestyle that they desire. Other people want to be more interactive. They want to be on site. They want to be in person with their teammates. So for us, especially when it comes to our co-op students as well, like we want to give people that variety of different options, so they can choose depending on what kind of experience that they want with us. So some of our co-op students in the past, for example, they've traveled, they've nomaded during their entire co-op term, and that was their choice to do. So for those students, we have virtual events for them. So events where all the co-ops can get together, play games. We have team-wide events as well. We also adapted different tools, such as we use this one called Gather Town, which kind of simulates an office environment where you can go into different rooms. You can put like mini games in there that people can play. So it's supposed to really like simulate what it's like to be in an office and hang out with each other. So people appreciated that. So for the remote people, we have different ways that we can try to keep them engaged. And then on the other side, for people who do want more kind of in-person experience, we do organize in-person events in all of our, key or major cities, Toronto, KW being the major ones. We also had our first company offsite as well, which was really, really fun. We had a space. It was actually a mansion in Banff, and we all got together and co-worked for a week and did some hiking and sightseeing together. So that was a really nice way to have everyone in the same space collaborate and also bond through a shared experience. So I think for us, in summation, what we are learning is just to have different events, different things that cater to different sorts of preferences and people, so that we all have different ways that we can feel that sense of bonding and togetherness at the company.
That whole piece about collaboration, whether it's actually in-person application or virtual, is key. Stuart, what's the perspective from Martin Rea? I know in terms of the manufacturing industry, it'd be great to hear from you.
Yeah, so we are a manufacturer of things. We supply car parts, and during the pandemic, we were essential. So really, other than the first, 6 to 8 weeks in 2019, we operated, 24 hours a day, 5 days a week, all of our locations worldwide. So we really focused on a core principle for us is treating everybody with dignity and respect, and we made sure that our work environment would absolutely be safe. Right, we had zero plant-to-plant transmission through the entire pandemic in all of our plants in Ontario. So we really went above and beyond to ensure we gave physical safety. We really focus on the mental safety also, right? A lot of our students are coming through the transition where they spent their second year or the end of their first year doing 100% remote learning at home. So we encouraged community within the students while they were at the workplace. So, Jeff, who's sitting with me here, facilitates weekly and bi-weekly thought sessions, right, to challenge the norm and talk about why manufacturing is just as sexy as some of the other businesses in California or in the United States, right? It's important that we attract the right talent and we create the right environment. We allowed our students to build their own workspace. So one of our students from a previous term said, okay, I'm going to build the student area, right? We at times will have up to 30 students at a time. So it'll fluctuate depending on the terms. So we create the space and we create the environment for them, and we encourage them to interact socially. So there are events that we plan, and then there are obviously events that the students plan to get together. But we really wanted them to experience a work environment and personal interaction between themselves, between their families, between our other workers and their mentors and their coaches that we assign when they come on board. So, but to do that, we had to ensure we had a safe environment, which is our first principle for all of our operating here in Martinrea, is to ensure that you are physically and mentally and socially safe, right, while you're a co-op student here. So we really encourage them to learn. They have to do a presentation at the end of the term on what did they learn, what did they like. We have direct impact with our HR team throughout the term, monitoring their mental health and their physical health to make sure that they're okay, right? We don't want to discourage anything or any behavior, right? We want them to explore, right? They still have to meet our policies for inclusion and diversification, but we really want them to grow in this environment, right? They operate right inside our factory with all of our people, and the energy changes when they're here and they're not here. The buzz in the plant changes, right? And buzz with the mentors, right? There are days where it has been taxing. We've had a lot of supply chain issues and the plant is up and down, right? But we're steadfast in our commitment to creating an opportunity for the next young generation of leaders.
The only thing I could add to this is that we study also how do we become the future employer. And with the help of Evie Poon, who's actually integral to the student program here with Waterloo and interfacing with Waterloo Works and everybody there, she's actually an ethnographic researcher on board with us that actually study the nuances of the next generation and how they work. We took that very seriously. And when we did that, we found several things that were key components of that. The next generation is not lazy, is not entitled. They're actually incredible people that have even better work ethics and really invigorate the engineering team and the people that are professionals here. They work much longer hours than we do. They stay. There's a OEM executive that asked me just last month. He goes, how can you compete with people who are giving remote access to work, because they have the choice now. I said, well, not our students. Our students want to come. They typically come, some of them as much as an hour and a half commute to get to here, and then they stay often much later than our professional group. And how does that happen is because I think we miss the point sometimes that they know how to collaborate probably even better than we do. And by creating a student body experience, we're able to, give them the freedom and autonomy to actually work together. They know how to collaborate. They were born with a lot more technology and the ability to collaborate much earlier than we have, right? So we could learn a lot from them. And then that perspective from our first principles at Martin Rea, which is giving dignity and respect to everybody, is how we approached the student program, especially with Waterloo Works and how the Waterloo Co-op program work. And that is treating them like professionals. They're actual professionals in their field, and they have the ability to reach out to ideas and technologies that are even more cutting edge than what we apply. By taking those ideas, we're able to be absolutely the cutting edge in applying this technology in a field where manufacturing sometimes is viewed as, that's the old way of old industry. Actually, it's not. It's actually a much more difficult industry as we deal with the physical world and the multi-millions of variables that occurs in the physical world. And by applying the next generation technologies in adaptivity, deep learning or machine learning, we're able to achieve some crazy results in this brand new world.
And I think that world's just going to continue to evolve, Jeffrey. And it's really interesting in terms of how innovative each of you have been in creating that connection to the next generation. If I reach back to Clarice, what's the next steps for you? Where do you see this evolving at Lumentum?
I think for us, it's the collaborated learning. It's the acknowledge that we have a different type of workforce and that we have to be open to learn in a dual way. And mostly here has mentioned the well-being of everybody has been on the topic of this part 2 years. So how you create an environment that is safe. The term psychological safety is something that HR we are now moving towards. So how to create that in different type of environments for the different type of generations to still work towards our end goal. So we are a technological company. Ottawa is an R&D site. So all our employees are looking towards what is the next thing. And that implies also the next generations and how to work in a collaborative way that is safe.
Thanks so much, Chris. David, for you and the various locations that you represent as well, what's the next sort of innovations that you feel that your organization is going to move towards for that connection through the next gen?
Yeah, so for us, I think it's maybe like two aspects to that. So I think for one, it's about being, again, very deliberate and strategic on how we kind of nurture the experience of this key stakeholder group, being our employees, of which the co-op students are a part. So that's scientific. How can we study kind of there and learn and observe behaviors to remove any barriers, remove any frustrations, just maximize the kind of quality of the experience so that, we can attract talent and we can, continue to position ourselves as an employer of choice and compete and stay ahead with in the war for talent. Then, on the other hand, because we are a very diverse, geographically diverse and also diverse in terms of the lines of business that people work in terms of the areas, the functional areas of the organization. But how do we create an environment of sort of co-collaboration across all these? So we kind of bring together the diversity of views and opinions and solve much more difficult problems. How do we bring kind of the marketing team, the accountants, the actuaries, the underwriters all together to collectively, varying viewpoints to find new opportunities and solve challenges? And that's the way forward for us. Instead of working in these kind of monolithic stacks of like-minded and people, how do we mix it up, using tools, using ideation approaches to really solve challenges. That's where this is evolving to for Arcus.
Thanks so much, David. And again, you mentioned about how tools have evolved in this space, and Linda, you touched on that earlier as well. What's the next thing for Hypotenuse Labs? You've got people that are working in different locations. You've got some people that are wanting to be in person, face to face. You've got others that want to be remote. What's going to be the next phase for yourselves?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think for us, we're always learning, which actually I think is really the key here. Is a lot of best practices really come from like a small idea, someone saying like, hey, maybe we should do this, or maybe we should try this, and it's from that idea that we take that idea, we test it out, and we see if there's interest, and if there is, then we continue doing it and trying to make it better, and keep evolving that process, so that we can, maximize our engagement with everyone. So I think for us, it's important just to stay agile, especially when it comes to developing these new ideas into more, I guess, like formulated processes, and, even stuff with events. That's how it goes from an idea to something that, is a practice for us. So I think for us to really emphasize being able to collect feedback from people, and making a space and creating a space where people are comfortable with sharing directly with us how we can make it better. And that's one of our core values here at Hypotenuse Labs, is always trying to be better at what we do. So just as a quick example, some of the feedback we've gotten from previous co-ops in the past, who's worked with us, saying like, oh, it's really great when we, co-op here, but when we get put on a project, sometimes we don't know what happens outside of that project. They know their project very well, they know their team very well, but it's very possible to get siloed into that project. And for that, we totally understand. We are a consultancy, so we work with a lot of different types of clients. So it's completely understandable that people would have that feeling of not knowing what's going on outside of their immediate project. So that was something that we took to heart, and trying to think of different ways that we can prevent those knowledge silos from happening, and facilitate better knowledge transfer amongst everyone. So from that idea, we started doing something that is now called demos, where we have all the project teams come together and they do a little presentation on what they've been working on. Now it's a bi-weekly activity that happens with everyone, and it's just so well received, especially by co-op students, because it gives them so much exposure to all the other things that are going on within the company. It also allows them to see potential projects that they could work on, and it incites interest from them as well. And then we can talk to them if they would like to work on a different project, they want to talk to a different team member, just get some insight on what they're doing. So the idea itself isn't crazy innovative, but I think for us the key takeaway is that we're able to adapt to feedback, and that's how we're going to continue to become better, is by taking that feedback to heart, and finding new and different ways to engage with our co-op students, as well as the wider team. And that's how I think all of us are approaching the situation, really is just trying to understand this new landscape, and just to keep reshaping and retooling based on what we've learned. So hope we can all continue doing that.
Thanks so much, Linda. It's really important to have that input from the people to help shape the way that they work. Stuart, Jeffrey, I've got just a couple more minutes left, but give the last words to you in terms of what's the future innovations you feel in this space for you guys? Because I know that you've got plants in different countries, and how the challenges of keeping all that connected too.
Go ahead.
I'll start off with just saying, one of the things that Martin Rio does extremely well, and Stuart was going to say that as well, is culture is our next competitive advantage, for sure. It's the way that we approach innovation, from weekly discussions with students that are outside of the projects, that changes the way we think about innovation. Also, I like to say that one of the things that innovation comes from your constraints, and not the absence of constraint, but I would always tell them that where your constraints are, that's where your innovation is going to be. And that's if you're willing to work on it, that's exactly what happens when you see something that maybe, hey, this doesn't work, or this is not how the company works here. But then suddenly you say, wait a minute, that's a constraint. And what if we can innovate in this area? And by opening up their minds in the ability to say, yeah, you know what, I want to work on something, and giving them the opportunity to do so, I think we can really start to see what the students actually bring to the table. We don't actually call them students here, right? We rarely call them students at our facilities. We actually talk about how they're an integral part of the professional group with us, and they certainly drive a lot of the changes that are happening here, and they invigorate our workforce. So I think maybe to close off, our innovation is our student program, because it humbles us, right? Mm-hmm. Keeps us humble. Imagine a 19-year-old telling you what to do every day. But that's exactly it, right? Why can't we have somebody who is very excited to be with us, to tell us like, hey, we could try this. I've seen this somewhere else, or I have an idea. Would you like to hear about it? And I think that's one of our greatest innovation in our field. Perhaps the student program is the innovation.
Thanks so much, Xavier. It's a great way to actually end it, because just to hear your input and the stories and the background that you've got, just incredible, but also total testament as to why you are all Employer Impact Award winners of the University of Waterloo for 2021. I want to again congratulate you all. I want to thank you for sharing your perspectives. I'm really sorry we didn't have any time for Q&A, but I think just listening to that thoughts and the inputs and how you're all evolving and you're keeping connected and you're enabling those opportunities through to our students make you all very, very special employers. And for that, we're really grateful. Well, this concludes our panel. We hope that you will join us again on February the 15th in 2023, as you heard earlier from Nora. This will be our first CEE Impact Conference. We will be sharing details in the next few days on how to register. So stay tuned as well for information on how to apply for next year's CEE Employer Impact Awards. Hopefully see some applications from everybody on the screen as well today. That would be wonderful. So again, thank you all and enjoy a wonderful day ahead.
Congratulations to everybody.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.